Good evening, everyone. Notice it's really light now, isn't it? Isn't that nice? Except right here behind me, there's that light, and it moves. And I think it's going to move that direction up there because the sun's going that way, I believe. But anyway, it's light, and that means that warmth is on the way. It's not here yet, but it's on the way. It will be here, right? Hello, everybody online, and I am really glad that we are going to begin tonight the book of Leviticus. The name of the reading is the name of the book of Leviticus in Hebrew, which is the word Vayikra. Vayikra. And it means he called. And you'll notice that the reading, I wrote on the notes in the reading that if you have a Jewish version of the Bible, the numbers are going to be different than in the non-Jewish versions. What do I mean by Jewish version? I mean either the tree of life or the complete Jewish Bible. Those will be, it'll be the end of 5, okay? But in an English non-Jewish version, the numbers are different. There's a lot that's different, but the numbers are one of them. So I hope that you guys got that. Okay, the words that we're going to learn tonight in Hebrew, the Hebrew words we're going to look at are words that are in the reading. Okay, so these are directly out of your reading. Okay? So if you want to really learn it, you cover up the English and you only look at the Hebrew and see if you're able to sound out the letters. Okay? So look at that. We have a kof and a resh and a bait and a noon. So it's going to be k-ra-ba-na. Right? Yes. Korban is the word. Korban. Sometimes what helps me in learning Hebrew is if I write the consonants out in English, all right? So that would be, how would you write that out in English? K-R-B-N. Okay? All right, next word. You have an ayin and a lamed and a hey. Okay? The ayin in this word is going to be O. Okay? So you have O, la, ha. O, la, ha. And that's exactly what the word is. Olah. Olah. Okay? By the way, korban means offering, and it is from a root word that means draw near. Draw near. Okay? Olah means go up. Something that goes up. Remember the word Allah? Allah is literally the verb go up. Okay? Olah is a noun that has its root in that verb Allah, and it means something that goes up. So what do you know back in ancient days that always went up? Incense, smoke always went up. This is why in our English versions it's known as a burnt offering. Okay, in Hebrew it isn't the word burnt. It's the word goes up. Because it goes up, something that is offered up. That's olah. Okay? Next word, you have a mem and a noon and a hate and a hey. I bet you that's going to be a neat one. Okay, so it's ma-na-ha. Ma-na-ha. The word is mincha. Mincha. Except I didn't do the h very well. Mincha. Okay, if I were really good at Hebrew, I could just rattle those off. Mincha. Okay, and it means something that is given, like a gift or a tribute. Okay? Next, you guys all know the derivative of this word. Okay, if you were just looking at that word, shin lamed mem, that would be sh-la-ma. What word would that be? Shalom. Okay, but in this version of the word, it's shalem, which is a peace offering, okay, or a shalom offering. All right? You guys doing all right? You're looking at your notes? Okay, the next word is the letters. What is that first letter? Hate. Okay? Yes. So you have hate and then a t, right? Hate and an aleph and a tav. And that word is going to be ha-ta. Ha-ta is the word. Ha-ta. And it means sin offering. Okay? The last word is aleph shin mem. Okay? Anybody want to guess without reading the English? Almost. Asham. Asham. Which is means a guilt offering. Okay? All right, now we're going to really get into it with the reading practice. And I'm going to do my best. I'm going to read that out loud, nice and slow. You guys follow along, right, left, and then we'll go back and see if you can join me. All right? So here we go. Word number 1, La David. Wonder what that means. La David. Okay? Baraki. Nafshi. 8. Yahai. Vekel. Karabe. 8. Shem. Kadasho. Okay? Now, we're going to go nice and slow. See if you can sound out the letters. La David. Baraki. Nafshi. 8. Jehovah. Vekal. Arabe. 8. Shem. Kadasho. Okay? Anybody have any idea what you just read? Okay, how about La David? David is in there. La David. What is the La? Okay, no. Good guess. Okay, when a lamed is used at the beginning of the word, you know how when a vav is used at the beginning of the word, it's and. All right, when a lamed is used at the beginning of the word, it's of or by. Okay, so that means the words that you're going to read, and there's a line there. See that line? Okay, what that means is you've got an intro, and the intro is by David. So where would this be in the Bible? Yeah, Psalm. This is the beginning of Psalm 103. Okay? And the words you have there, baraki, means I bless. Bless. Okay? The next word, nafshi, is my soul. Okay? The next word is et Yehovah, which means Jehovah. Okay? The Lord. You've heard this. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all within me, his holy name. Is the word name in there? Yeah, Shem. Okay, second to last word. That last word, all right, is kadosho, which is, the root word is kadosh, which is holy. So they're a little jumbled up, and the reason they're jumbled up is the Hebrew order is not the English order of the words. So anyway, now you know. And you can go home and you can read that and memorize it out loud, and you'll be walking around saying, bless the Lord, oh my soul. You might not want to begin it, though, with La David every single time, because it's by David. But anyway, now you know. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the reading for the week. Okay, we have some others joining on Zoom. All right, this week, and what we're beginning in the book of Leviticus is one of the most important readings that you will ever do in Torah or in all of the Bible. If you do not grab hold of what this reading is about, then nothing else is going to make any sense. Okay, the book of Hebrews will be nothing but gobbledygook if you don't get what this is about. Okay? And what it is all about is the way that we draw near to God. The way that human beings have been given by God in order that they might draw near to him. So I don't know, I'm going to guess that all of you have read the whole book of Leviticus at least once. What comes to your mind when you think of reading the book of Leviticus? Now, you guys that are here, I know your answer is going to be, it's awesome. It's amazing. I want to go back and read it again. But most people, when they hear the book of Leviticus, they hear either rules, a lot of rules, okay? Or they hear there's a lot of blood in Leviticus, which there is. The word blood is used 70 times in the book of Leviticus. Or maybe just boring, okay? How many of you have ever read the book of Leviticus and it was boring? Be honest. All of us. How about that? All right? In English, the word means relating to the Levites, Leviticus, okay? But we know that that isn't the original name of the book. The original name of the book is taken off of the beginning of the book, all right, which is, and he called, or just he called. And the word is Vayikra. Now, remember that if you have, this is not in your notes, by the way, this is a reminder, because I know that a lot of you already learned this. In Hebrew is an amazing, amazing language, that this language that I believe God gave men. He gave us the Hebrew language. I don't think it was invented. I think when you read in Exodus that Moses came down the mountain, it's very specific. He had the tablets of God and the writing of God. Okay? So think about that a little while. But if you take the names of the books of Torah and you put them together in a sentence, there is meaning. Okay? So what's the name of book 1? Bereshit. Okay? Which means in the beginning. Okay, the next book, Exodus. Okay, it's Shemot, which means names, and it literally begins, these are the names. Okay, put those together. You have in the beginning, these are the names. The book of Leviticus, Vayikra, begins, and he called, or that he called. So you have, in the beginning, these are the names that he called. Okay? The book of Numbers is Bamidbar, and it means in the wilderness. The book of Deuteronomy is what in Hebrew? Anybody know? Davarim, and it means these are the words. Okay, so altogether you have in the beginning, these are the names that he called in the wilderness, and these are the words. It's the story of Israel, really, and their meeting of Jehovah, their marriage, if you will, and their learning the ways of God. Okay? Very, very neat. So Leviticus is the very first book that Jewish children would learn. You would think, my goodness, wouldn't they begin with something like Proverbs or maybe the book of Ruth because it's, short? No, they begin with Leviticus. Okay, so it's like foundational in learning how we relate to God. In Leviticus, we learn about what holiness really is. Okay, that word is in there 77 times. We will learn about how beautiful and amazing the gift of the sacrifice of Yeshua really was. Okay, by looking at the gifts that are given in Leviticus. Okay, we learn in Leviticus about God's holy days. Okay, the one we're getting ready to have in about a week and a half, right? Passover. And then you learn about Shavuot. And then you learn about Yom Kippur and all the other days. That's in Leviticus. Okay, in Leviticus, there are, it was where we learn about right and wrong behavior in relationships with one another. Okay, and we learn something that means a lot, even though to most of us who grew up or we've been believers in Jesus many, many years, we really don't get the whole clean and unclean, right? But in the life of Jews, in the days of Yeshua, believe me, they knew all about it, okay? And they would do almost anything in order to not be unclean, okay? We learn all of this in Leviticus. In Leviticus, you have the words, okay, in the 19th chapter, you are not to take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am Jehovah. So you learned that in Leviticus. All right? Something else is the very first Hebrew letter in Leviticus is the letter Vav. Okay? It's usually translated as and. Okay? So if you have Vav, the letter Vav, V, and then you have David, V, David, that would mean and David. If you have La David, it would mean of David. But Va is usually translated as and. And the ancient language letter Vav was a nail. Okay? And a nail is what you use in order to connect something to something else, which is what you use the word and to do, isn't it? Okay, so the letter Vav is a nail. So it begins with a Vav, which lets you know that, in a way, Exodus doesn't end. Okay, it's like, here's Exodus, and what we know of is the end of Exodus, and then we have a nail connecting us to the beginning of Leviticus. Why? The reason is that Exodus ends with a need of more. We need more. It's like it almost didn't end, okay? Here's the way it ends. You may remember Moses and Israel, they raised up the tabernacle, and the glory of Jehovah rested on it and in it, right? And this is what we read. Moses was unable to enter into the tent of meeting. The cloud resided there, and the glory of Adonai filled the tabernacle. Now, whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, Bnei Israel went onward throughout all their journeys. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not move out until the day that it was. Okay? For the cloud of Adonai was on the tabernacle by day, and a fire was there by night in the sight of the house of Israel through all their journeys. Thus ends Exodus. But it ends with a problem. Okay, and if you haven't read ahead in the notes, what is the problem? It's that Moses is unable to enter. And if Moses is unable to enter, nobody else is going to be able to enter. Okay? So in other words, God gave the instructions. Guys, here's how I want you to build my dwelling on earth, that I might dwell with you on earth. However, nobody can enter. All right? Leviticus helps us know how we enter. How do you enter in a relationship with God? Now, this is amazing because what a lot of us learned is that we don't need all that Old Testament law junk, all right? And you just, he's your buddy. He's right here. And you just, God, how's it going today? Like that. And, a lot of us have lived that way. But when you do, you miss what it really means to draw near. Okay? And we're going to learn that in Leviticus, and we're going to learn it tonight. All right? So here we go. Let's begin Leviticus 1, verse 1 and 2. Now Adonai called to Moses and spoke to him out of the tent of meeting, saying this, Speak to Bnei Israel and tell them, when any one of you brings an offering to Adonai, you may present your offering of the livestock from the herd or the flock. Now it goes on, and what you're going to read about is a description of all what we know of as the main sacrifices that were given to Israel. But really, a better word is offerings. They were offerings. Okay, and we're going to learn why that's a better word in a minute. One is the word that we already learned at the beginning, which is korban, which means draw near. They're really draw nearings. Okay, they're the ways that he's going to give them that they might draw near and that they might enter in. Okay, when they need to enter in. Now, I'm not, this isn't the Holy of Holies. This is just entering the tent of meeting in general. And Moses wasn't even able to do that. Okay, now, when we hear the word sacrifice, and we hear it in an ancient context, in our day, what that usually means, the idea that it brings up, is the movie Joe versus the volcano. Okay, where, there's got to be an offering made to the gods so that the gods aren't mad at you, right? Okay, that's the idea that a lot of people believe. And, the reason they believe that is almost every ancient religion and culture had these sacrifices that they had to make, and a lot of them were human beings, right? Like babies, okay? That happened a lot. But those ways of sacrificing are not God's ways. Remember, he was bringing them out of Egypt. He did not want to be worshipped in the ways that they worshipped the gods of Egypt, okay? In pagan sacrifices, they were usually either a bribe, where you had to give something to the god in order to get the god to do what you wanted the god to do. Maybe I should stop right there a minute. A bribe. I'm going to do something in order to get God to do what I want him to do. Have you ever done anything like that? Okay, that's the pagan way. Okay? Secondly, it was an appeasement. In other words, it was like fire insurance. Okay? This was an attempt to pacify the God who was angry at you. And if you just throw up a sacrifice, then he won't be angry with you anymore. This is the way a lot of us believed about our walk with God. That's what we were doing. What Yeshua did, this is the belief, and I'm not suggesting it's right, but it's a normal belief in Christianity, that the reason Jesus died was that God was angry, and Jesus took God's anger on him so that you didn't get it. Okay? Right? Okay? That is not what is going on. This isn't about God's anger. This isn't about getting God to do anything that you want him to do. Okay? This is not about that at all. This is a way that the holy creator of the universe, who longs relationship with us, and he lays out the road. Here's how you get to me. Here's how you can draw near. Okay? To these people who heard these ways, this was good news. It's really good news that I don't have to bring an offering to God and give it to him so he doesn't whack me. That's really good news. Okay, so we must not think of Jehovah's offering system in the way that the pagans did. Okay, or we're going to miss its meaning and its purpose. Later in Deuteronomy, Jehovah is going to remind Israel of this. And this is very, very relevant in our day, I believe. These verses in Deuteronomy 12. When Adonai your God cuts off before you the nations that you are going in to dispossess, when you have dispossessed them and settled in their land, be careful not to be trapped into imitating them after they have been destroyed before you. Do not inquire about their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods? I will do the same. You are not to act like this toward Adonai your God. For every abomination of Adonai which he hates, they have done to their gods. They even burn their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. Now, a lot of us read that and we think what God is doing there is saying, don't worship idols. No. Yes, that is right. Don't worship idols, but that's not what this means. What this means is don't worship me in the way others worship idols. Now, I'm just going to drop this out there. All right? Way back in the year 300-ish, a group of Romans who realized that it was not going to be easy to get all of their nation to drop their old religions, okay, like they worshipped Zeus and they worshipped all of these gods that you know about, the Roman Greek gods. Okay, they worshipped all of them, that overnight they weren't going to just drop all of those gods. So what they did was they did something that was brilliant. They said, you know what? We'll incorporate things about those gods into our worship of Jesus, and we'll name it Christianity. Huh? Isn't that what happened? That's exactly what happened. So exactly what happened is exactly what Jehovah said to Israel, don't do that. And that's exactly what they did. And they handed it down generation after generation. Something else that's very interesting is when Israel, okay, in later, when Israel was wiped out and scattered by the Assyrians, do you know what the reasons were? The main reasons. Number one, they didn't keep Shabbat. Secondly, they made up their own holy days. It's right there in the book. So this really matters. I believe it really matters. And I am, our God is very gracious, very merciful, and very patient with us. Because a lot of us didn't know. Okay, well, hallelujah, he's revealing it. So that's good news, right? Yep. Okay, now, what we read in Leviticus 1, okay, verse 2, was when anyone brings an offering to Adonai. As you know, Adonai is Jehovah in Hebrew. Yod-He-Vav-He. Okay? Now, we know in Exodus, he revealed his name to Moses. You remember that? He revealed his name. Moses asked, what is your name? He revealed his name. Later in Exodus, he revealed the nature of his name when he put Moses up in the rock. And we went over all those words that he used as he went by. And every one of those words is about love and grace. Yes, one of them is about justice, but justice, as we learned, is love and grace. Okay? So all of them are about this amazingly gracious God. Okay? In Leviticus, the word Yehovah is the only word that is used of God in all of these instructions about the offerings. Never Elohim. Elohim is not a name. Elohim is a title that in our Bibles usually is God. Okay, but that isn't his name. That's like man, husband, doctor, Elohim. And Elohim means the mighty creator, okay, the righteous judge of the universe. But Yehovah is the one who has mercy and is love. This is all, yes, one being that this is written about. But what I want you to get is in Leviticus, when he's giving the offerings, he wants them to relate to him by his grace and his love and his mercy. Okay? Which is one of the reasons I believe that name is used over and over. So we already looked at the word korban, which means offerings. And in the ancient language, the ancient pictograph, it means the progression for a man or a woman to enter the house. Okay? That's amazing. The very word offering, these are the offerings that Israel is to bring the very word means the progression for a person to enter the house. I think that's amazing. You can only do that in Hebrew. Okay? So, the offerings are not about bribing. They're not about pacifying an angry God. They teach us how we might draw near to Jehovah in his house. And don't we read in the book of James, draw near to God, and he will draw near to you, right? And then James tells us how to do it. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. In other words, drawing near to God is about realizing there is a level of holiness that I must walk in order to really draw near to God. And if I'm not walking in it, yes, I can cry out and he will hear my words, and often he even moves, but the intimacy is not there. Drawing near is about intimacy. It's not about whether or not God whacks you or gets angry. It's not about that. It's about intimacy. Okay? So the Levitical offerings teach us how to be cleansed and purified. Okay? So we're going to look at those now tonight. We're going to look at each of the offerings from the perspective of Yeshua's offering. So remember, when when Moses and Israel are getting these words from Jehovah, the offering of Yeshua hasn't happened yet. Okay? Since we know that offering has been made, are there things about these Levitical offerings that we no longer do? And the answer is yes. But does that mean they don't mean anything? The answer is no. So we're going to look at what they mean, okay? So how do we now, as believers and followers of Yeshua, how do we access everything that is given in these offerings, okay? So, number one, we begin with what is usually known as the burnt offering, which you've already learned is the olah, which means going up, ascending. Okay, and it begins in verse 3 of Leviticus 1. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he is to present a male without blemish. He is to offer it at the entrance of the tent of meeting, so that he may be accepted before Jehovah. Isn't it nice that our God tells us how we can be accepted? That's amazing. Do you want me to accept you? All right. Then here's what you need to do. Now, the language isn't as much if as when. When you bring an offering that's going to burn up, this is what I want it to be. Okay? Now, the burnt offering, as you read on, you'll learn that it could be of your cattle or a bull or a sheep. But if you didn't have any of those, and you didn't have enough whatever you needed to buy it or get it, then you could bring a bird. A dove or a pigeon would do. Okay? But the idea is that for you, it had to be something that was without blemish. Okay? In other words, not with a broken arm, not with, a one eye gone, not the one that's out there in your herd that you want to get rid of anyway. This is not giving to goodwill, right? I don't want that hat anymore. Give it to the church. Sorry. I know all of you guys have given things to the church, right? And having done this as long as I've done this now, usually my answer is, no, we don't want it. Just because I don't have anywhere to put it. And then anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So It had to be without blemish, and it had to be something that was valuable, extravagantly valuable. A bull without blemish was very valuable. If you were poor, okay, a pigeon or a dove may have been very valuable to you. And now you're going to bring it, and it's going to be burned up. So it almost looks like it'd be a waste. Like if I have $1,000 bill, and I take it out, and I light it, and I go, here you go, God, and it burns up. Well, what you got to remember is in their world, remember what rose up. And the idea of rising up is a picture of rising up to heaven. This is why in the tabernacle there's incense, okay? And it rises up, and in the book of Revelation, you read that incense is the prayers of the holy ones. That's you and me. So our prayers go up like incense. This offering was to go up like incense, something that was literally to be given to God. Okay? Now, here's the idea. A lot of us think that these offerings are all about the blood. They're not. Okay? One of them is, but even that isn't about blood in the sense of, ooh, gross blood. It's about life. In the ancient world, in the Hebrew mind, and in the Bible, the life is in the blood. So what you were doing is you were offering up a life, because God is a God of life. A lot of the rules that we're going to learn about what is clean and what is unclean are directly related to God being a God of life and not death. What is the ultimate unclean in God's realm is death. Dead body. Death. This is why, and we're going to learn, this is why when a woman is on her monthly, she's unclean. Why? Because there's a little death going on. Something is being removed out of her body that is no longer alive, and it's a little death. So during that, she's unclean. She didn't do anything wrong. Being clean and unclean isn't always about sinning and not sinning. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you have to do things that you have to do, and it makes you unclean ceremonially, which meant to them they wouldn't be able to go into the tent of meeting. They wouldn't be able to go in. And this is how they drew near to God. Okay, so we'll get into that as we get more into Leviticus. Now, this whole idea of offering up something extravagant is illustrated in the Gospels when the woman with the alabaster jar of very expensive oil meets Yeshua. And we read about it in Matthew 26. And she poured it on his head as he was reclining at the table. Let's stop right there. Matthew 26. Where are we in the life of Yeshua? We're at the end. We're right before he's going to die and give up his life. Okay? But when the disciples saw it, this isn't the religious leaders. This is Peter, James, and John, and the rest, and Judas. When they saw it, they were indignant, saying, why this waste? It could have been sold for a lot and the money given to the poor. But Yeshua, knowing this, said to them, why do you cause trouble for this woman? She's done me a mitzvot, a good deed, a good work. I believe in another gospel, it's that what the woman did will always be remembered. Okay? Was it a waste? Well, I don't know. I guess if you're looking at life in terms of only economics. Maybe it was, but there's more to life than economics. Okay? So this was very expensive oil. In a way, this woman was making an olah offering to Jesus, to Jehovah, by anointing him. Okay? Now, here's what I believe this means for us. This is the offering of total commitment and dedication to Jehovah. All right? Just as Yeshua was all out, okay, for his Father's will and purpose on earth, we are to be all out. That's what this offering is a picture of, okay? I'm going to give it all to him. Some say it like this: I'm going to live my life for an audience of one. It's all for him, okay? Are we able to do that? Yeah, I think we are. I think a lot of us are. Paul wrote about this in Romans. Remember? He said in Romans 12, I urge you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service. I believe it's a living olah that he was writing about there. Okay? So that your life is going to go up. It's beautiful. Okay. Next we have the grain offering, which in Hebrew is that mincha word, mincha, which means grain or gift, and sometimes it was known as the meal offering. Leviticus 2 is where we read about this. When anyone brings a sacrifice offering of grain to Adonai, his offering should be of fine flour, and he is to pour oil on it and put frankincense on it. I've heard that word in the Bible, frankincense. Okay, this was an offering of the best flour and unleavened baked goods that would be anointed with oil and frankincense. A handful of it was burned on the altar. What happened to it when it was burned on the altar? What did it do? It went up. Okay? But what was left over was there for all the priests to be able to eat. Okay, so they were bringing their offering, they were lifting it up to God, and it was going to go to help the Levites, the priests who were there, so that they would be able to eat. The bread was to be unleavened. Okay? Leaven in the Gospels represents sin. So the bread was to be unleavened. By the way, this bread was known as the bread of life. Okay? And Yeshua was the bread of life. Okay? He was unleavened, right? Because he didn't have any sin. And the offering was anointed with oil. The very word Mashiach means the one anointed with oil. The anointed one. Okay? And this offering was to be seasoned with salt. Okay? We read in verse 13. Also you are to season with salt every sacrifice of your grain offering. You are never allowed the salt of the covenant of your God to be lacking from your grain offering. With all your sacrifices you must offer salt. Now, why? Well, one reason is it makes it better. It tastes better, right? A little bit of, salt on your meal, and maybe that would make the Levites really glad that, well, it's going to be really good now. But that isn't the reason. The reason is in the ancient world, all right, they had bags of salt that they would have on them like we have a wallet. Okay? And they would use it in Moses' day. Salt was very, very valuable. In Yeshua's day, not as much. Okay? But in Moses' day, it was very valuable, and it was used in trade, and it was used in making a covenant. Okay? So if you had a neighbor and you wanted to make an agreement with your neighbor that was a covenant, what you would do is you'd get out your bag of salt, they get out their bag of salt, and you mix a little bit of it together, and then you stick a bit of it back in your bag, and he sticks a bit of it back. What it was doing was it was binding you together. Okay? And that's what this offering is about. The bread offering. Okay? Now, remember Yeshua's words at his memorial meal. In John, we read, "No one has greater love than this, than he lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I am no longer calling you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing. Now I have called you friends, because everything I have heard from my Father I have made known to you." So for us, the meaning of this grain offering is it's an invitation into friendship with our God, with Jehovah, okay, and Yeshua. So what do we offer? What do we do in order to be his friend? You are my friend if you do what I command you to do. Somebody asked me earlier today, because somebody asked them, okay, why do you obey God? Might be good to think about that. Why do you obey God? There's a lot of different reasons people might give. Okay? One reason that people give is because I don't want to get burned. Right? I obey God because I don't want him mad at me. That reminds me of the guy that was like in Vietnam, and he had a necklace. And on his necklace, he had a cross and a Buddha and a Star of David and a rabbit's foot and all of this hanging on his neck. And his buddy looked at him and said, "What in the world is that? I mean, what's that hanging around your neck?" He said, "Oh, this is a cross," and told him what it was. And he's like, "Why do you have all that?" And the guy goes, "In my position, I can't afford to make anybody mad." Okay? That's the reason that a lot of people maybe obey God. All right? But that isn't the right reason to obey God. What is the right reason? Why would you obey God? Because you love him. Because he loves you. And you want a relationship with him. It's the only valid reason. And I would add, it's the only biblically valid expression of human love to a holy God is obedience. It's the only thing he gave us. There's nothing else. There's no other option. You can do everything that you think you want to do in order to love God. But God gives us his love language. Sometimes we're like the husband that's just, you look at your wife and you're like, "Honey, you're gorgeous. Honey, you're beautiful. Honey, I love you. Honey, And then 20 years later, you find out that your words don't mean anything to her. Why? Because that's not her love language. What is her love language? Running the vacuum. Just saying. So sometimes we do that with God. Well, I believe that I hear this. I've heard this. You've probably said this. Okay? I believe that God likes it when I love him my way. I'm going to worship God my way. My way to worship God is yada, 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 fill in the blank. Okay? Well, I mean, it's great that you want to worship God, but it might be better if you looked at the book and the way that he goes, look, this is how I want you to worship me. This is how I want you to draw near, right? Are you guys with me? All right, let's move on. I'm getting into preaching here. Number 3, the fellowship offering. In Hebrew, it's shalamim, which is shalom offerings. We know the word shalom means a lot more than peace, but that's how you usually read it in English. Okay? We read in Leviticus 3, verse 1. Now, if his offering is a sacrifice of shalamim, okay, offerings, if from the herd, whether male or female, he is to offer one without blemish before Adonai. I need both hands to get my lozenge here. Excuse me. Don't look at me for a minute. You realize you're online. People are watching this all over the world. And I'm human. All right. This offering was the only one that was eaten by the individual who brought it and the priests in the presence of Jehovah. It was meant as a celebration of relationship. Wine was often shared at this meal. Okay? There are many Jewish leaders who believe that Passover is a form of this offering. Okay? I don't know if I would go there, but it has a little bit of validity, I guess. Okay, at Yeshua's last Passover, okay, with his own disciples, he did identify the meal they were having as a covenant meal, and he was going to be the offering, right? Okay, which is why you read in Luke, okay, in the same way, he took the cup after the meal, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." So the idea of this offering is that it is an ongoing invitation for us to renew our commitment with our God. In a very real way, it's an invitation to renew our wedding vows to Jehovah and thank him for his peace and protection and ongoing presence in our life. He brings us shalom. So we offer up to him what is valuable to us, but always without blemish. God is not interested in junk. Of course he's not. He wants our best, right? In every way. Okay, now we get into the one that most everybody thinks of when they think about the sacrifices. Okay? We've already read about 3 of them that have 0 to do with sin at all. Okay? They're just offerings in order to help you draw near. So you want to bring these offerings and you want to draw near because you want to be in a relationship of intimacy with God. But yikes, you find out that you have sinned during the week or during the day or whatever. Oh no. Now what am I going to do? Jehovah gives you a way. Okay? It's a way to be forgiven and cleansed of whatever it was that you did in disobedience. In Leviticus 4, you read this, "Speak to Bnei Israel, saying, if anyone sins unintentionally in any of Adonai's mitzvot that are not to be done and commits any one of them, or, God forbid, even if the anointed Cohen sins, so as to bring guilt on the people, Then let him offer for his sin, which he has committed, a young bull without blemish to Adonai for a sin offering. So this was like mandatory. The other offerings you could bring as you will. But this offering was mandatory. Why would it be mandatory? Romans 3:23. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So God is going to give a way to even get over that hurdle in order to be able to be near him. And it's the bringing of this animal. This is all about restoring the relationship between human beings and God. When we break his laws or neglect his laws, okay? In other words, when we sin, there is a barrier that is made, and the relationship has a brokenness there. This is a way that God gives in order to repair the brokenness in the relationship, okay? And notice, even the priests are included in this. You know, gosh, I can't tell you how sometimes it's people think that if you're in the ministry, you're like a holy man that is more holy than everybody else. Really? Okay? So I know there's a level of all of us who are leaders need to be watchful. Yes. But you know what? Everybody is just as human as everybody else. Okay? And it's noted right here in Leviticus. Yes, even the priests, okay, when they break the law unintentionally, there's an offering for them. So don't ever believe anybody that lies and says they don't sin anymore. Okay? So, about this offering, number one, this one was for specific sins of an individual or the whole community. Secondly, it was for known sins, those that you are aware of. It's like you became aware of it. All right? And God is going to give you a way to restore the relationship. Hallelujah. It was for unintentional or inadvertent sins. This sin offering is not for rebellious, what the Hebrews know as high-handed sins. Did you know that? Okay, there's not an offering or a animal sacrifice that will bring you forgiveness if you have sinned rebelliously. What do I mean by rebellious? You knew it was wrong and you did it anyway. Or you knew it was wrong not to do it and you didn't do it anyway. That's rebellious. Okay? Anybody ever do that? Oh, we're in big trouble. We're not, because his grace is beyond measure. Okay? That doesn't mean that he looks the other way. That's not what I mean by grace. Okay? But this offering was, part of it was burned on the altar. And it's very specific what they were to burn. The kidneys and the liver and all of the fat that was connected to them. Why? Well, in Hebrew, the word kidneys also means mind or heart. Okay? God wants our minds and our hearts on his altar that he might purify them. The liver is the body's filter. And the word for liver in Hebrew is kabed, which is from the word kabod, which means glory. In other words, put on God's glory, his filter in your life. This is the next statement in Romans written by Paul. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your liver and your kidneys, so that you may know what the will of God is, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And the last thing about this offering is that all that was left was to be brought outside the camp and burned. Think about this. You're going to bring this offering in. It's an unblemished animal, and you're going to bring it in. It's going to be offered up, and it's going to be burned, and everything that has to do with it, the ashes, all of it, goes out there. Why does it go out there? Because God wants you to know when he forgives you, it's over and done. It's thrown out there in the wilderness. Okay? He's not going to bring it up, and he's not going to remember it anymore. Okay? However, the offering had to be made. Okay? Without it, if you were an Israelite, without it, you weren't forgiven for unintentional sins. That's a little bit scary. Okay? That means when you miss a rule or a commandment or a mitzvah, you didn't mean to do it. It was inadvertent. It either slipped your mind or you didn't even know you were doing it. If you didn't have this, there was no way to be forgiven in the presence of a holy God. Okay? So this is really good news. How do we access this offering? Okay? Well, in 1 John 1, verse 8, he writes, if we say we have no sin, we are deceiving ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and righteous to forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. Was Yeshua a sin offering on our behalf? Yes. Okay. Was he the Passover lamb? Yes. Was he? I hope you get the idea. He's a lot more than just a sacrifice. This is like looking at a diamond and looking at all the different angles of it and learning, wow, Jesus did that, and he did that, and he did that. Yeah, all of it. All of it is there, which is really amazing and beautiful. Okay, the last one, I believe, that we will look at tonight is the guilt offering. Okay, Asham offering. And the basic deal about this is that when one is guilty of one of the things that is listed, he ought to confess about what he has sinned and then bring this offering, the Asham offering, for the sin that he committed. And then he gives you the what you have to bring. Now, this offering dealt with distinct categories of non-intentional sin. If it involved a wrongdoing to another human being, then restitution had to be made before you were allowed to bring your offering. Wait a minute. Didn't Yeshua say something about that we learned last Friday night? Right? Didn't he? Look, he said if you're going to make an offering and you remember that your brother has something against you, and presumably you maybe have something against him, leave your offering, go, be reconciled. He was talking about this. Okay? You had to make reconciliation and restitution. Okay? For us, this means that we are always to take responsibility for our own sins, and that we are to practice forgiveness and reconciliation towards others. By the way, the ancient pictograph of the word for this offering, asham, means the strong leader destroys chaos. Okay, that's really neat. Okay, in Hebrews, we learn by his will, we have been made holy through the offering of the body of Messiah Yeshua once for all. Okay? So he did that. But now there's a big question left. All of that has to do with unintentional sin. What do you do with rebellion? What do you do with, I knew it was wrong and I did it anyway? How in the world are we going to handle that? These are like felonies. Okay? Think of them like that. These are like high-minded, high-handed rebellion sin. What happened when anyone did this is there was nothing in the offering systems that would help them. So they were handed over to another element of Torah known as the curse of the law, or the curses of the law. Okay? In other words, there had to be punishment that would happen. And this is what Paul wrote about in Romans. Okay? For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Yes. And what is the wages you earn? Death. So the ultimate curse of the law is death. You rebel against Jehovah, you die, is the ultimate curse of the law. Okay? Now, by the way, this is what you read about in Galatians when you read about that Yeshua delivered us or liberated us from the curse of the law. It meant that you and I deserve death because all of us have rebelled, and therefore he made a way so that you and I could be delivered from the curse of death. People read that and they think that the law is a curse. The law is not a curse, but in the law, in the Torah, the curse is described. Okay? You with me? Now, there's only one way that you and I can get out of this situation of intentional sins. And it's one word. Anybody want to guess? Grace is an element of it, but what was it? What was it, Emily? Repent. Okay, so did you do good? Yeah, okay. You didn't hurt anybody. Or you. Right on. Good. Okay, so the only way to get out of it is turn away from it, confess it, and don't go down that road anymore. Okay? It is literally the grace and mercy of God that brings you the forgiveness when you've gone down that road. Okay? And then you can go back and you can draw near and draw near and draw near. Okay? In Romans, Paul writes that there is now no condemnation for those who are in Messiah, Yeshua. What does it mean to be in him? It means you trust him. You're in a relationship with him and you want to obey him. So you're turning away from all of those ways of rebelliousness and you're learning to live in his ways. Okay, and then he goes on. The law of the Spirit of life in Messiah, Yeshua, has set you free from the law of sin and death. Stop right there. The law of sin and death is not Torah. The law of sin and death is when you rebel, you die. That's the law of sin and death. For what was impossible for the Torah, since it was weakened on account of the flesh, meaning your flesh, okay, God has done, sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh as a sin offering. He condemns sin in the flesh, that the requirement of the Torah might be fulfilled in us who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Ruach, the Spirit. What does that mean? Well, how do you walk when you walk according to the flesh? You walk by the world's ways. When you walk by the Spirit, you walk by God's ways. And where do you read God's ways? Torah. Okay? I gave you words of Tom Bradford at the end of our lesson here, because they were really good. They're really good words. I know it's a lot, but they're really good. And if you want to go back and read or hear any of his work, I highly recommend it. I mean, he's really good. I learn a lot from listening to him. And you're going to recognize, you're going to hear him say things and say, hey, Pat said that. Yeah, he did. Where do you think I got it? Okay? So, here's what he wrote. Because not one person has ever gone his lifetime without sinning, that by God's grace there is now a method by which all those sins can be atoned for. To Paul, it was obvious that Messiah did something more than what the Levitical sacrificial system was capable of doing. And what Christ could do was atone for the intentional sins in our lives as well as the unintentional. When Yeshua died on the cross, at least two things were accomplished that directly affects us. One, he paid the price with his blood for our sins. He atoned for our sins, intentional and unintentional. And two, as the Passover lamb, his blood marked us to be passed over for eternal death, spiritual death, which the Bible describes as first and foremost eternal separation from God. All of that and more. Okay, it's just the beginning, just the tip of the iceberg. Okay? Okay, is there anyone among us that would like to ask a question? Any questions? Gar, go ahead, and I'm going to see if I can repeat it for these guys so I don't have to get up. I can hear you. Uh-huh. Does it have a name? Ah, the red heifer. Uh-huh. That was a cleansing. That wasn't a sin offering. That was a way of being cleansed of an uncleanness that happened when you touched a dead body. It's related in a way to when we read about what you have to do when you get that disease, that skin disease, tsa'arat, and you have to get a bird and cut the bird in half and take the feathers off and take some blood in a jar and go down to the river and mix it with water and sprinkle it. It's bizarre when you read about this. You'll read about this in Leviticus, okay? That was a cleansing that was going on. So we'll learn more about that when we get there, the numbers. But that's a really good question. Yes, Tom. Frankincense. They must have, yes. We have a little bit in our house as an oil. But, yeah, and isn't it amazing that they were to do that grain offering, mix it in, Yeshua, the bread of life, was given frankincense. Yeah, pretty neat. Pretty neat. Okay, yes? Okay. Oh, all right. So Jim asked if I would summarize what I was talking about with the idea of the curse of the law. Okay. It is. In Galatians, it is. Because in Galatians, in most English versions of the Bible, you read something like this: Christ has delivered us from the curse of the law. Okay? So what in English that means, or that might mean, that the law, which we know is Torah, the law is a curse. So in their view, Yeshua delivered us from having to do what's in Torah, because it's all a one big curse. All right? But that isn't what it means. The curse of the law is the same thing that he writes about in Romans. It's the law of sin and death, which is, you sin, you die. That's what he delivered us from. So, that makes sense? Good. Anybody else? Yes, please. Uh-huh. Sacrifices to other gods. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. Okay. Sure. No. I would not use Jesus came in order to appease God's wrath. Okay, God's wrath is real and exists now against everything that is ungodly. Okay, he's not waiting to get mad or wrathful. It's already there. Okay, it's an element of justice, is what it is. When justice is not met, there is an angst. There is a wrath. There is something that hasn't been met. Okay, so he demands justice. There has to be justice, because that's the way the universe works. Okay, it isn't that God is arbitrarily sitting there like you or me, and your little boy does something and it makes you angry, and you're like, give me $1 or something. No, it's not like that at all. It's like something in the universe is wrong. Okay, whenever there is a deed or an act or anything that is against the ways of God, something in the universe breaks, goes wrong, like this. Okay, that's the idea of his wrath. And his wrath is aimed at whatever breaks that thing in the universe that wasn't meant to be broke. It's aimed at that. But what you and I need to realize is, even though we may be the vehicle that is used to break whatever is broken, there's somebody behind us. Okay, there's a devil. when we read in the book of Revelation about the lake of fire, that was not made for human beings. That was made so our idea of hell was not built for you and me or any other human being. Hell is built for the demons and the devil that have done the destruction to God's world here and us. That's what that is meant for. He has done everything on his end in order to deliver us out of ending up there. But when we go there attached to the demons. Does that make sense? Okay? So the whole idea of his wrath is aimed at that. And in Romans 1, when he begins the letter, he writes all about God's wrath. And he says God's wrath is right now on. Tells exactly the brokenness. He begins to list the brokenness of what God's wrath is on. Okay? So I imagine there's another word that we could use that would work better than wrath. But right now I don't know what it is. So I don't know if that helps. Okay. Okay. Any more? Yes, David. Impending justice. Yeah, that might work. Gart. And then Dana. Right. Well, it ends up being there for non-believers. Yes. But God doesn't want it to be aimed at any human being. Okay? You're thinking of it as angry, like I'm mad at you. Okay? It isn't that. It's justice that hasn't been met. And if he is a just being, then justice will be met. Okay? And that's one of the facets of the diamond of what happened when Yeshua offered his own life up, okay, on the cross, was an element of that justice was met. But it's not the idea that God was mad and you're going to appease him and now he's not going to be mad anymore. No, it's just the way it has to be. If God is going to remarry Israel, and yet in the justice system, by the way, Torah, another way of looking at Torah is the justice of system of the universe forever. Okay? Here's the justice system that we will live with forever. Right? And in it, when X happens, Y must happen. Since God is God and he's righteous, he can't just go, bloop, I'm doing away with that one. Okay? So he has to meet all of the requirements of justice in order that he keeps Torah. Which is another reason that Yeshua offered his life, and it needed to be offered, was if God was going to remarry Israel, there had to be the death of the first husband, if you will. So, it's another facet of it. Okay, yes. Okay. Yes. You got it. I mean, I don't think that he's mad. Does anybody else think that he's mad? He's not a mad God. It's not his nature to just be angry. Okay? As a matter of fact, when we're reading about his nature, remember, he has a long nose. He's slow to anger. Okay? But he is a being. Right? We're made in his image. We're not robots. He's not a robot either. But okay, Dana, last question. Comment. If you're going to do that, then would you like to have the mic in your hand? Because I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Oh, a short comment. All right. Go ahead. Oh, yes. How to be people of royalty. Yes. Yep. Yep. Yes. Yes. So Dana is bringing up that there's a book that they're reading in the men's group that is the Supernatural Ways of Royalty by Chris Valentin. And in it, you're learning how and what it means that God doesn't remember your sins anymore and washes you and all of that. Yep, it's a very good read. I enjoyed that book. I read it years ago, and I enjoyed it. So wait a minute, time out. Hello, somebody online is waving at me. That's okay. Esther, go ahead, and then I'll get back to Dana. Go ahead, Esther.
Hey, Pat. So we can sin unintentionally and unknown, right?
Yes.
Do we, according to our wellspring praise, how do we ask forgiveness, or how do we get rid of that if we don't know that we sinned and we did it unintentionally?
Father, I ask that you forgive me for any way that I have fallen, things that I know and things that I don't know. Just like that, by the blood of Yeshua. Okay? Yep, just like that. I think that when we have communion, it's a good moment um, to do that. Just go over it. Cleanse me, Father, from any of the ways that I haven't walked with you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say good night to the online audience, and glad you were here. Have a great week.